It's a great honour for me to be here today and to be leading this masterclass. I'd certainly like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land that we are on here at the University of Queensland, which is Turrbal and Yagara country. I'd like to acknowledge all the traditional owners on the lands you are on today, and pay my respects to their ancestors and descendants who continue cultural and spiritual connection to country. And we recognise the valuable contribution to global Australian global society. So today, in preparing for this seminar, this masterclass, I invited people to send me some questions that they would like me to address in this presentation, because I know within this audience there is a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge of children, and I would like to also personally acknowledge just how challenging and difficult it has been for so many of you at the front line as a result of the COVID experience over the last 3 years. And we all know that it's not over yet, and very significant adjustments to our practices and our priorities, and indeed sometimes our own families and the broader environments that we function in have had to take place over this time period. At the same time, it's been an interesting period for growth and innovation. And so in this seminar, in this webinar, I'm going to be sharing with you, why should we be continuing to emphasize the crucial importance of taking a whole of population approach to evidence-based parenting support. I then want to go on to highlight some of what's new, things that have happened over the last little while that you may not have heard about in terms of the evolution of Triple P. Then we're going to move into your questions, and I've invited some people to kindly record the questions so that you can see what it is that they wanted me to address. We're going to go then to an open question format for other additional questions and wrap up with what next. To get the most out of this, it's probably going to be helpful for you to approach it as a moment of pausing and reflection. So essentially, what ideas are going to make sense to you today, if any? If there are, write them down. What changes, if any, will you make in your practice or priorities? What ideas might you have that you can share with a colleague? Consider what you need to do to make a plan and just do it. I think the important thing here is to just ready yourself to spotting ideas that potentially are of value to you. So let me begin with the perspective that we bring with Triple P to the whole issue of evidence-based parenting support. Of all of the potentially modifiable things that we could do, the risks and protective factors that influence human development, none are more important than the quality of parenting children receive. Lots of people are now thinking of this in terms of positive parenting being the clean water of children's mental health, resilience, and well-being. And indeed, the National Children's Mental Health and Wellbeing Strategy gave very clear priority to the importance of improving what we do to make it accessible to more parents in terms of evidence-based parenting. But it also emphasised the importance of viewing children's mental health and well-being as a collective responsibility. It's not just individual families and parents, but it's communities, services, educators, who all have an important role in promoting positive outcomes for children. Indeed, there's been a paper that we've published recently really arguing that it's crucial to have a policy-based commitment to increasing the reach of evidence-based programs. This was published in Child Psychiatry and Human Development just very recently in December last year. Now, the case for this, I think, is increasingly compelling because the effects of parenting on children are not confined to a single phase of the life cycle. It's tempting to think that all the action is over in the first 1,000 days. It's not. Every 1,000 days of a child's life is important. And when you look at the diverse range of outcomes that parenting and the parent-child relationship and parenting practices have been demonstrated to be related to, it covers a very wide area of children's development. Gone are the days, I think, where we can just think of a parenting intervention as a child-focused intervention, because parenting programs actually target adults and their functioning. And by inskilling and empowering them, we can see some very important changes to the way they interact with their children. They're more positive, less coercive. They have better relationships with their kids. They've got certainly an increase in their own sense of self-efficacy and agency. This is often associated with improved mental health and well-being. When your kids are less challenging, less difficult, you're getting on better with them, it does affect your overall mental health and well-being, often including things like less conflict over parenting because you're working more as a team. And for those parents in the paid workforce, if parenting skills are applied at the points of transition from home to work, work to home, you can have better work-life balance because you're not importing the stress from one setting to another to compound that when you return home on a day-to-day basis. So the principles of positive parenting are really relevant to all families. And this 5 key principle idea has become more and more nuanced over the years, but fundamentally, we're talking about creating a safe, secure, loving, and non-violent home for children. And we might throw in there a healthy home as well in terms of exposure to things like toxic fumes and so on. We need to be thinking about creating a positive and interesting and responsive learning environment to focus on what we need to do to help children learn to self-regulate their behaviour and emotions, and to do so by having reasonable expectations, not just of kids, but of yourself as a parent, and of course, people who also look after our children. In many different contexts in the lives of children's development, and finally looking after yourself as a parent. Trevor Mazzucchelli and I, who's from Curtin University in Western Australia, have recently published a piece on trying to understand the mechanisms that might explain whether change could occur at a population level, for example, in the rates of child maltreatment or in preventable social, emotional and behavioural difficulties. And one of the things about this whole field of parenting support that's taking a population perspective is that there's actually been little work to try to identify when change does occur at a population level, and it can, what are the factors that are driving that change? And so in this model, which is accessible on the link there, you can see that whatever we're doing to shift parenting in terms of their day-to-day, moment-to-moment interactions, which in turn will potentially influence child outcomes, there are some modifiable things that we can target in designing a system of evidence-based parenting support. We can look at program features of the design of how we deliver it, the cost, the accessibility, the delivery modalities. We can make sure that we're addressing the contemporary concerns of parents, which need to be identified not just in a single point in time, but because of change over time, particularly as we've seen with COVID. We need to make sure that whatever population strategy is being used is contemporary, is relevant, is not yesterday's news. We need to understand the motivational levers that will ensure that parents get committed to participating and see it as a healthy, normal, desirable thing. We need to tune into the parental mental health and well-being that they are bringing to a situation where they are considering participating in a parenting program. Well, what sort of program is needed when you've got significant problems with addiction or mental health problems? We need to be considering parents' beliefs and cognitions relating to how they think kids should be raised, what's contributing to the development of these problems. And of course, it's all occurring in an influence of culture, which is crucial in informing priorities the areas that parents feel they might need support. And we can't be prescriptive about what this is, because if you take into account context, there are different contextual influences that influence what people's local priorities are. And then in addition, we need to think about the whole issue of, if you can get it working in one place, how do you multiply it? How do you scale it in a way that would lead to even a vague possibility of shifting the needle at a population level? And so when you think about the Triple P system, it started off as a level 4 home coaching, individually administered program in the homes of preschool-aged children who are aggressive and disruptive, kids we call early onset conduct problems. However, over a period of 4 decades, Triple P has now evolved in a very, very significant way, where about 6% of all of the 386 evaluation studies have focused upon level 5, the most intensive level of the intervention. About 80% of those studies have focused upon level 4, whether it's individually administered, group administered, self-help, telehealth administered, or online. And then the other 14% relate to the light touch, lower intensity interventions. But as of about a month ago, this program has had about 183 randomized trials conducted, which makes it really probably the most extensively studied parenting program in the world. And it's an Aussie-based program, but it's now involved research from 37 countries with nearly 500 institutions, research institutions involved in this work, and 1,500 authors. The emphasis of Triple P has always been one of building the self-regulatory capability of parents. Within the teaching of parenting skills, we focus on this notion of helping parents develop the tools for change. They need to clarify from a values perspective what it is their priorities are, what their goals are, what they'd like to change, and develop being reflective about whether or not you've achieved what you set out to do. It's about promoting that sense of personal efficacy. I can do this task, this role of being a parent. And when change occurs, I'll attribute it to my own effort rather than luck or other factors. I become a good problem solver because the knowledge I'm acquiring about principles, skills, and strategies, I'm looking for ways to apply flexibly with other children, different problems, different time periods in their lives. And the goal fundamentally is to become as independent and autonomous and self-determining as you are able, recognizing that parenting does in many contexts occur in a village context. But unless parents have that sense of personal agency and self-sufficiency, it's likely that the level of support that they are going to require will continue. And so the theoretical framework with Triple P is this blending of principles of self-regulation with social learning theory, developmental theory, and research from public health. So what's new about all of this? Well, there are a couple of new findings that I think are game changers. The first one is that last year, we published a well-funded randomized trial conducted in the United States that demonstrated for the first time that you could deliver an 8-module online, completely online program without professional support, and it would produce an outcome that is comparable to 10 sessions of individually administered, high quality, high fidelity of implementation of the Triple P model. And at 12 months follow-up, both groups are significantly improved in terms of outcomes. This work has then been integrated, led by Jamin Day and other authors who've contributed to the research on Triple P to help us have greater clarity around what's contributing to outcomes with respect to families participating in an online offer, because it's not a panacea, it's not for everyone. Some families will find it a little more difficult to do on their own, but the trial data is basically showing very significant impacts on parenting practices, parenting confidence, and child behaviour problems. And it's not just through parent report of this. In our most recent study, there was a teacher report and other independent observational data available as well. Module completion is a predictor of outcome. So the more you do, the more likely it is that you're going to be reporting an outcome. But parents can actually, in an 8-module program, complete the first 4. And if they get through that, they do just as well as completing the rest of it. So the pre-intervention levels of difficulty predict outcomes, basically showing that families with the greater problems show the greater benefit. And I mean, they've got more to move in terms of change, but it challenges this notion that families with complex problems can't do online programs. And socio-demographic factors were not significant predictors of program outcome. I think the main thing to emphasize from this is that families will differ when they're entering online programs with in terms of their self-regulatory capability. Some are quite capable of doing it on their own and will do pretty well, and others might need some scaffolding and support to get started and to continue. When we think about these findings, I mean, the exciting news that Lisa Studman will be talking about announced today, of course, is the Commonwealth Government, through the Department of Health and Aged Care, through its Parent Education and Support Program, is announcing today that P online programs will be made freely available to all families throughout Australia from birth to age 11. And it's a suite of programs that will be gradually introduced over the next little while. But the good news for those of you who've done a lot of Stepping Stones training is there's going to be a version of Stepping Stones as an online program, and you'll see some others there as well. The other thing that is news is really the development of Fearless P targeting parents of children with anxiety-related problems. And Vanessa Cobham has been leading this work with Fearless P. And the important thing to just highlight here is that what began as a 6-week program, which is a fairly light touch intervention with parents only being targeted, at follow-up, when compared to a control condition, about 84% of parents reporting their kids are now free of significant anxiety that would define them as having an anxiety disorder. Now, this is good news in some ways, because the whole idea of having a parenting intervention that parents can do as an intensive 6-week program, or either in a group or individually, or they could do it as a 1-day workshop, which incidentally was producing comparable results to the 6 weeks program, or coming soon, a universal parenting seminar that would be available to all families who are concerned about how kids manage and deal with their anxiety. Another new innovation that's occurred has involved taking this notion of the ecological context of parenting to a new level. We've been working with the NRL to develop a parenting intervention that could be offered universally to all parents who are enrolling their children, registering their children to play rugby league. And we've been trialling the prototype for the last couple of years in Queensland. And this is a half-an-hour online program that includes also text messaging twice a week throughout the season. Of course, the whole idea is, how do we promote children's enjoyment and participation in playing rugby league, and at the same time reduce some of the more problematic parenting behaviours that can occur. This is a little glimpse.
I like the fact that you can run around and make friends and have fun. We're from East, the mighty, 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 roar!
I like footy because it gives me a sense of belonging.
I learn new stuff and I have friends.
I've just been playing it for 10 years now, and I just enjoy it. It's just in my blood. I just have fun every weekend.
Yep, you heard him. Aussie kids love their junior sport. But how much they get out of it depends on you and me. Welcome to Play Well. This program is all about how we as parents can help our children enjoy junior rugby league and make the most out of it. There's plenty of positive stuff they can get out of the experience. But hey, don't take my word for it. Let's pass it over to the experts and start with one of the world's leading parenting coaches.
Thanks, Sam. Enrolling your child in junior sport is a great investment in their physical and personal development, but it's only the first step. Our influence on how our kids enjoy their sport goes well beyond weekends of cheering here on the sidelines. Together in this program, we'll look at ways of becoming a more positive sporting parent, how to avoid common traps and strategies to strengthen positive behaviour. Believe me, it is well worth making the journey because there's so much to gain for your child in the long run. To get the big picture, let's cross to Dr. Cassie Didman.
Thanks, Matt. Junior sport may simply seem like a great way for your child to get fit and have fun, and that's certainly the case. But let's lift our perspective and look at the whole field of benefits our children derive from playing team sport.
Okay, that's just a little snapshot of this module. It's a single half-hour module. It's an online interactive program, so parents are working on identifying things that they wish to change, and they're being nudged through weekly text messages twice a week during the season. And our feasibility trialling of this in Queensland basically showed there was a very significant reduction with close to a medium effect size in, increase in parents' involvement, positive involvement in junior rugby league, a reduction in negative behaviour and involvement in terms of the game day experience. They were less negative on the sideline and high levels of parent satisfaction. The aspiration in the end is that this is going to lead to a greater enjoyment of children and parents participating in junior sport. It's a prototype. It's potentially going to be applied in other sports as well. But this problem of the way in which families are engaging with sport is a general issue. It's not a rugby league specific one. And I've got to congratulate the NRL for funding this initiative and to recognise there are families who are participating in playing sport where this is potentially the only exposure they're going to get to a parenting program. Let's now turn to some of the questions that have been sent to me. One of the sets of questions really related to the importance of grandparenting. And the question really is, does Triple P work for grandparents? What's new? Is there going to be a new program coming out about this? And the answer is yes. There's been now a number of randomized trials that very specifically looked at grandparenting in two contexts. One is non-custodial grandparenting, where you have at least 12 hours of contact with the grandchildren per week. And the other is with custodial grandmothers, particularly in the United States. These studies have been conducted in Australia, in Hong Kong, and the US and Vietnam. Basically, what's been found is that grandparents really do benefit from participating in Triple P, either straight group Triple P or an adapted version that is specifically designed for grandparents, which is just about to be released. So that's really coming very soon. In addition, the research is focused upon the improvements in the grandparent-parent relationship and also the grandparents' reporting of children's behaviour. But not all grandparents will have their parent involved in participating in doing Triple P with them, and they're likely to be doing it potentially on their own. That is, a parent might be doing it on their own, but is there a grandparent issues involved? And that was the focus of April Hung's doctoral work in Vietnam, where she demonstrated that the provision of group triple P that combined a module on compassion that really focused upon this as a self-care behavior for the parent who felt the grandparent living with them potentially is not going to change and wouldn't participate in the parenting program, and showed really positive benefits for the parents' mental health and well-being and the psychosocial problems of children. The most recent work that was published in the United States was by a group led by Greg Smith from Kent State, who basically showed that delivering group triple P was as effective in reducing custodial grandparent distress, emotional distress, as CBT, delivered to those grandparents in a group context. And so if you think about the associated distress that can be occurring with the challenging role of grandparenting, then these findings suggest that offering triple P, either involving the grandparent directly as a co-partner doing it together, or the grandparent alone if they're a custodial grand family and do not have contact with their adult children but are responsible for the care of their grandchildren. This seems to be a great benefit to the custodial grandparents' mental health and well-being. And then finally, the idea of if a parent is co-resident with a grandparent and the grandparent is perhaps challenging, difficult, not on board with it, then focusing on helping the parent learn triple P, but in the context of trying to improve communication with their parent or parent-in-law and doing self-care work involving compassion-related activity seems to be very beneficial. Let's move on.
How does the triple P model deal with parenting problems that occur in the context of multiple other problems, including trauma, addiction, and parental mental health problems?
Okay, well, thank you for that question. The design of the triple P system has always had this notion that it's not a one-size-fits-all and that you need a tiered continuum of support for families with more complex presentations. And as I said earlier, about 6% of all the evaluation research has focused on those families in complex situations. The important thing to remember is that the original design is that if parents are introduced to the parenting skills and then if they require supplementary or enhanced interventions, they have been able to in the past to access through enhanced triple P, which has got additional modules focusing on communication with partners, focusing on management of your own emotions, building an approach to teamwork and so on. They've also had the options of doing pathways triple P, which the idea for me working on this really originated in New South Wales, doing some group triple P training for social workers who are saying, you know, I think the families we work with need additional things. And so we landed on the provision of extra modules around attribution retraining, that is helping parents who've got a belief system that, you know, my child is deliberately doing this to annoy me, to upset me, then if they can change those beliefs and cognitions, they're more likely to be able to reduce their anger, feel that retribution is less likely to be justified. And we're able to demonstrate, and others have as well, that the provision of this attributional and anger management training is very, very helpful for parents at risk of harming their children. And then, of course, you've got other interventions like family transitions triple P, which is focused upon parenting in the context of separation and divorce. All of these are existing programs that, when you think about a population approach, families with complex problems, of course, are also able to participate in things like community seminars and discussion groups and so on. So they, in an environment where it's becoming socially normative for people to prepare for parenthood, The parent with complex problems is less likely to associate the program with stigma or to see it as something, this is what you do when you're failing as a parent, which is really problematic. And of course, this introduces the work that we've been doing in New South Wales with the Sydney Local Health District team to do a trial, a feasibility trial of an intervention called Family Life Skills that particularly focuses upon complex presentations of vulnerable families with high levels of ACEs. The important thing to remember here is the capacity to self-regulate is related to many different aspects of our lives in terms of not just our parenting role, but our role as partners, as workers, as members of a community, etc. And self-regulatory capacity is diminished when parents experience these multiple forms of adversity. That diminished self-regulatory capacity can really adversely affect the way in which parents can interact with their kids. So it's useful to just pause for a moment and just ask the question, well, what is self-regulation and what does it look like if you would be considered to have high self-regulation as a parent? Well, first of all, you'd have a clear sense of what you want to do, how you wish to raise your kids, what behaviors and skills do you want them to develop that you would see as fitting with your culture, with your priorities, with your views on how the world operates. You'd have realistic expectations of your children, yourself and others looking after them. You would be attuned to zeroing in on what's going on. In other words, you would be reflective frequently about how you're going and have this awareness of what your children are doing, whether they're safe, whether they're busy, whether problems can be anticipated. When valued outcomes, for example, if you had a goal of, I want to leave for work without shouting at my kids, and you find you getting angry, you're giving the kids the hurry up, you're feeling as though you're about to explode, a self-regulated parent would activate these self-control processes that would enable them to pause, to tune into their own actions, to search for memories relating to what they've done in their Triple P work and how they can handle that transition situation. They may even just need to pause for a moment, refocus, take a few deep breaths, then get back into executing the plan. They would have expectations that change is possible because they've experienced change in the past. When they reflect on what they're doing, they'll do so without being too critical or harsh about themselves. Their reflections are going to be constructive and they're going to increase their sense of efficacy and agency. And they're going to use these self-regulation skills when they need it. In other words, you're not constantly on alert trying to, plan, monitor and track what's going on. It's activated by threat, by challenge, by things that are occurring that require a change of action on your part. Parenting's a tough gig, but they would mostly enjoy it. Now, the problem is that we've got a situation where families living in difficult, challenging circumstances, in poverty, in social disadvantage, in a world where they've potentially have mental health problems themselves. They've been exposed to family of origin models that are not terrific. They may have relationship issues with not just partners, but extended family, with teachers, sports coaches. You can see the potentially modifiable risk and protective factors around the outside. And instead of thinking of these as contraindications for doing parenting, let's think about parenting programs as a bi-directional opportunity to influence those social determinants of parental capacity. So we've been working with the team to essentially revise level 5 of our Triple P system, and I'd like to acknowledge the contribution of all of these contributors who have brought additional expertise in the area of trauma, in the area of self-care and compassion, in the area of addictions to the core Triple P authorial team. And the idea with family life skills, you have a front end of core parenting skills. It could be the group triple P for 2 to 12-year-olds. It could be teen triple P. It could be stepping stones. It could be baby triple P. And then you combine it with these additional modules that focus upon the life skills challenges that parents are confronting in terms of dealing with difficult emotions, how to take care of relationships, looking after yourself as a person, how you deal with parenting issues arising from the past. And there can be various ways in which trauma can have been experienced both historically and concurrently right now when the parent is doing the parenting program. The main principle behind this intervention, however, is that the level of introduction to these topic domains are relatively brief, they're focused, but they have a constant thread across each successive session of building that sense of agency, that sense of can do. There are things that I can do here that will make a difference. And parents themselves choose which of these domains they're going to concentrate on with homework and be supported in doing so. So when the trial was done, this was an open feasibility trial. We wanted socially vulnerable and disadvantaged families who had high levels of ACEs. We were successful in recruiting 50 cases, remember, terribly disrupted by COVID and had to transfer from group-based delivery to Zoom delivery via group with both a parent group and a practitioner group who had never done it before in this way. But a remarkable flexibility was shown and resilience by all concerned to still produce an outcome that showed that participating in family life skills was associated with a very significant change in terms of parents' reports of behaviour problems, reductions in unhelpful parenting, reductions in child abuse potential in terms of coercive parenting. And the mechanism, the underlying mechanism was showing this strong impact in terms of change in self-regulatory capacity, those 5 key principles that I highlighted previously that is embedded in Triple P as the common mechanism. And parents are much more confident in handling their kids' behaviour in particular situations, both at home and out of home. And this is improving to a very significant degree. The interesting thing, high base rates of child abuse potential and lower sense of personal agency when they entered the program was associated with a somewhat elevated risk of dropping out during the parenting pieces. But if they remained in, the good news was that they actually reported greater change in their children's behaviour, greater improvements in their own mental health and well-being, and greater reductions in child abuse potential. So this is looking a really promising intervention where, if you think about the recurrent targets of the intervention that is delivered across all of these modules and the activation of the underlying mechanism, what we see here is significant improvement in mental health and well-being of children, improved parenting, improved parental mental health and well-being, and a trend for increase in social support, which would probably be greater with a larger sample. Remember, an open trial, we're ready to move to getting a fully funded randomized trial. This looks really promising.
Hi Matt, my question to you is, what is the evidence and best model you can suggest for embedding parenting support into educational settings? Thank you.
This is a really important question, and I did a masterclass recently with educational psychologists and others delivering Triple P in Western Australia. And we had written an article that you can see there called Delivering Evidence-Based Parenting Support in Educational Settings. And what I'd like to do in framing a response to this question is just to highlight, first of all, how crucially important the quality of parent-child interaction is and parent-school interaction is to learning outcomes and the children's experience of schooling. And so if you think about the enabling skills that are important to do with children's performance at school, both academically and socially, there's a strong evidence base to justify schools taking that whole issue of preparing parents to support their children's education much more seriously. Mark Dadds and his colleagues have developed this really useful model called CAPE to describe what it is that we're doing when we're seeking to engage parents, from initial connection and awareness to intention to attend, their attendance, moving to participating in the program, and implementing the things you're learning to improve outcome.
Previously, people were felt that if they turned up to a parenting course, whether that be Triple P or anything else, that it would be an indication that they were a bad parent, or it would be a sign that they couldn't cope with their children at home. Whereas I think now people realise that actually this is a course, it makes them feel a bit more valued, it's something that is much more socially acceptable for them to go to. I think because particularly here in our local authority, Triple P is run all over the place, so it's much more common for parents to attend, and lots of different professionals refer people to attend the Triple P course.
The interesting thing is that Tianyi Ma, who's a doctoral student of ours, looked at the post-training outcomes of practitioners from around the world, about 1,200 of them who had participated in one or more forms of Triple P, and basically found that the level of organisational support and leadership was a significant predictor of their capacity to sustain their implementation. So school leaders, principals, the school system itself, if it's supportive of making parenting programs accessible, normal, healthy and desirable, it's more likely to happen. I remember in Cairns when we started the statewide rollout of seminars in Queensland, we were getting, a really good rollout of parents attending parenting seminars in schools. And one of the things that has become obvious, apart from the disruption of seminar delivery because of COVID and reduced rates of participation because of not quite the same degree of engagement with the online programs, it was important to start to think about who becomes an advocate and a champion for the support of making evidence-based parenting programs available in a community. And what this follow-up study, once again led by Tianyi and Cassie Telligin and myself, looked at is what are the predictors of becoming a champion for a cause such as advocacy for a program like Triple P. About 90% of practitioners reported that they became personal advocates once they had participated in training, and another 10% actually started a role of public advocacy. And this is at a higher level of advocacy, for example, presenting at a conference, being able to support a position paper, to advocate in policy. And basically what was found is that apart from believing the program is effective, the champions who are most likely to become public advocates are, surprise, surprise, those with more power or authority to do so if they believe in the program. So getting on side school leadership is important.
Thanks for the excellent presentation, Matt. My question for you is, how do you see Triple P meeting the needs of increasingly complex and challenging behavior in children transitioning from preschool to primary school? Thank you.
Very important question. I think the main issue is, first of all, let's not see the action needing to take place entirely around the transition period into primary school, because obviously earlier detection and earlier intervention is an important way forward here. Parents, when they're 3 and 4, if they participate in Triple P, what's been found is that in longer term follow-up of those children, they actually do better with literacy and numeracy at school and with higher school attendance. But in addition to that, we have to remind ourselves of the importance of the early childhood education sector. And importantly, there is a new version of Triple P called the Positive Early Childhood Education Initiative, the PEACE project, which is essentially for early childhood educators and those working in childcare, where the parallel skills that are taught to parents are introduced in a very efficient online training process that is now available. And this is a recent report that's demonstrated its efficacy. Once parents are ready to transition to school, they're worried about a number of things that about whether their children are equipped to handle the challenge that's ahead. And this is where the offer of a universal seminar program for all parents enrolling in school can be very helpful if you use an opt-out strategy rather than an opt-in strategy. Because if it's an opt-out strategy, then it's seen as healthy, normal, and desirable. It's not prescriptive. It's not about judging. It's not about telling you what you have to do as a parent to raise your kids. It's about creating a toolkit for parents to reflect on, to determine themselves what it is they feel that they need to do. And the school's role is to help parents, in a sense, get on the same page with the school with respect to behavior, what's expected in terms of, standards of conduct, but also the learning environment. Schools can also offer topic-specific seminars and workshops between that enrolment period, and of course provide a conduit for families to participate now in Triple P online, but with check-in support from, for example, a school guidance counsellor may identify a group of parents who want to do Triple P online, and then he creates or she creates a closed Facebook page or something like that that enables them to meet as a group. All right, so the other thing that I just wanted to emphasize here is the importance of effective teacher-parent communication. If you think about research that has really shown that if parents are difficult, challenging, and demanding, or abusing and accusatory towards teachers, this is not a good situation. Teachers report not being well prepared in their own training to handle difficult conversations with parents. And of course, parents are rarely taught the skills of how to advocate appropriately for your children. And this is a particular problem with parents with special needs. A doctoral project by Grace Kirby in our centre had identified in a survey of Queensland primary school teachers primarily that a very significant number of teachers are reporting distress as a function of their interactions with parents. So along with Grace and Julie Hodges, we are working on Our School, which is an alliance of parents and teachers program, and this is to develop a parallel online program for parents in terms of their interactions with schools and communication and advocacy, and for teachers to have a parallel process that prepares the reciprocal. So this program is being worked on at the moment, and we're envisaging within the next 12 months or so it would be accessible.
My question is, if Stepping Stones Triple P can't be offered or delivered to a family, is it okay to offer standard Triple P?
The answer is yes to this. In fact, we've got evidence from randomised trial work that Cynthia Lung at the Hong Kong Polytechnic University, she's now back in Australia, but has conducted a randomised trial showing the regular group Triple P in the hands of a knowledgeable, skilled practitioner working with those parents is able to achieve beneficial outcomes in terms of changes in children's behaviour. However, we wanted to make sure in the development of Stepping Stones with the Disability Services Commission in Western Australia that this was more customised to parents who had children with special needs. And one of the things that's been interesting with this is that you can also deliver Triple P online with additional material with a moderator around the additional stepping stone strategies. And Sharon Hinton's doctoral work demonstrated using the mechanism of telehealth with Triple P online and also supplementary stepping stones material could be very beneficial. We just had published an evaluation of stepping stone seminars for the first time, a randomized trial in Korea, conducted by a scholar at the University of Auckland with Louise Kewen and myself, which is an interesting finding.
Hi, Matt. A question. Time out from attention is a key parenting skill for teaching a young person to learn self-regulation when they are being disruptive, non-compliant, or unduly emotional. How do you manage the situation if parents refuse to use such brief separation approaches? Thank you.
Okay, I think the important thing to recognise is that the use of procedures like quiet time and timeout are very widely used in the parenting community. It's probably the second most commonly used parenting strategy, but it's one of those strategies that has developed some bad press at times, and there's been a growing evidence base to really look at the tricky questions. I mean, and some of this work, importantly, has been led out of New South Wales. Mark Dadd's recent work with his colleagues published in JAMA, I think, was very interesting because it posed the question of if families presenting with conduct problems had a history of trauma and were participating in a program that incorporated timeout, how would their outcomes be, and if any, compared to those who didn't have a history of trauma. And in contrast to what might be predicted, they did just as well as those families who had not had a history of trauma, which is speaking to the fact that many parents who've had histories of difficult times, when they learn the skills properly and do it appropriately, it can produce very important outcomes. And certainly no evidence that is credible at all that what was claimed in Time magazine that timeout damages children's brains. So if you've got parents who are concerned, what do you do? First of all, clarify the parent's referent. Where they're saying we don't like doing timeout, what are they actually referring to? Are they referring to what it is that we would consider to be timeout in Triple P? And so clarify whether the parent has used it previously or not. Identify what the specific source of the parent's concern is and where they heard about this. It was from the media, was it from friends, was it from articles, did it come from bad experiences? And then share, where relevant, the evidence that relates to the stated concern. And there's now quite a lot of evidence that's showing that parents who are doing Triple P report improved relationships with their kids. They get on better with their kids. They have secure attachment. It was interesting. I did an intervention a few years ago with a parent who said, you know, I've always loved my child, but doing this program has taught me how to like them. And I was thinking, gee, when kids are less challenging and difficult, they are more likable. And natural attachment processes that will evolve and be strengthened as a function of that. You can do live demonstrations of the technique, either showing the videos or doing it in person, which I'd recommend for a parent who's uncertain. And make sure the emphasis is upon non-escalation of voice, the preparation of the child in advance, the avoidance of any threats, and ensuring you remain calm and follow through. And of course, it's important to, when you do a demonstration of this with a parent, to show them, ask them about how it felt as a child going through that experience and what their reaction to it was. I mean, another question that we've been asked, well, how does Triple P deal with parents' children's emotions? And as though Triple P hadn't ever addressed children's emotions, when in fact Triple P right from the beginning has had strategies specifically embedded in tip sheets and seminars, in materials that relate to anxiety and distress, in materials that relate to children's kind of emotional reactions to things like being bullied and peer victimized, in teen triple P when there's a clear emotion behavior routine. This has all been embedded in the program. However, it doesn't necessarily mean that if you add an emotion enhancing component to delivering group triple P, it's going to improve outcomes. We tested this in a randomized trial led by Karen Salmon at the Victoria University of Wellington. She's probably known to many people in New South Wales because she was in New South Wales for a long time. But we basically compared group triple P and an enhanced, emotion-enhanced version of group triple P, no added benefit by adding the emotion component. Both were effective, even though the parents using the emotion coaching were demonstrated to have learnt the skills and implemented them properly, and that they actually occurred. It didn't add to the child benefit. So there are lots of things you potentially could do that don't necessarily add. So what's next for us? Parenting in a pandemic in February 2020. This caused a huge disruption to our lives and priorities here, both at UQ and in Triple P, because people's delivery capacity was being really challenged. And so we developed a whole multi-level system of parenting support around parenting in a pandemic. And those materials are essentially available on the Triple P website online. They're free, they're downloadable, they're shareable. In addition, we developed a podcast series and a television series, the material for which is accessible through our PFSC website. And of course, now we're moving to the next phase. We're looking at additional parenting resources. We're about to launch a new project focusing on a seminar series delivered through schools, focusing on post-parenting post-pandemic parenting, which is coming. We're also looking at the whole issue of the UN sustainability goals, and we've been doing a number of pieces of work to develop a theory of change, to argue in the literature that the scaling up of parenting interventions is actually crucial to make changes in a number of different parenting outcomes, in a number of different child outcomes that are actually related to parenting. And of course, that includes things like good health and well-being, but it's not just related to that, it's related to having a quality education, but also looking after the environment, patterns of sustainable living. Another exciting initiative is the establishment of the Parenting and Family Research Alliance, which we've done in Australia to join together all of the different evidence-based programs to take on the most fundamental thing of all, and that is, this is all about children. If we don't get to enough children and families, we are not likely to be able to shift the prevalence rates on these problems, and that there are many important evidence-based solutions that are part of that. And one of the first things that we've done, and I'm alerting you to this next year, June 6th to 8th, there's a global, international, first ever Congress on evidence-based parenting support that's been led out of Australia, and it is really having a strong focus upon challenging this problem. The vast majority of the world's population of children grow up in households with parents who have not had the opportunity to participate in any evidence-based parenting program that's effective, that's culturally appropriate, that's fit for purpose. Most people raise their kids without any form of support. And we believe if we can shift that, that will make a huge difference. So let's at this point move to some questions or comments, but I'd just like to end by saying, whatever has come to your attention, just reflect on what's made sense to you today, what changes, if any, you'd like to make to your practice or priorities, share the ideas, make a plan, and get out there and doing it. Remember, Triple P is owned by a major public institution, the University of Queensland, but the Parenting and Family Support Centre is partly funded through royalties And of course, UQ's policy to have a splits arrangement between faculty, schools, centres and contributory authors is what is operated in Triple P, and the university has licensed Triple P International that has been supporting the implementation of Triple P around the country for many, many years now. And it does so on our behalf as an industry partner and has taken Triple P to the world. So thanks, everyone. And here's some further information about where you can find out about the various resources and things I've talked about today, but I will end there. Thank you so much.